Hello and welcome to Easynomics. I'm Siddharth Zarabi, and on today's show, we are focusing on the latest in the India-Canada dispute that's emerged. It's a massive issue that has come across and has implications for India-Canada trade and business. And joining me now, Rajiv Mehra, President, Indian Association of Tour Operators, and Dr. Jayant Dasgupta, former ambassador of the World Trade Organization. But before we go to them, I want to get you, for viewers, a statement that was made by the Ministry of External Affairs by Arindam Bagchi, the Joint Secretary. Let's take a quick listen in and then we'll come back to our guests.
E-visas, yes, e-visas also are on temporary suspension. They also, because they would at some point also involve our functioning of our High Commission, our diplomats there. All categories of visas are suspended. Let me explain again. The issue is not about travel to India. The question is not about travel to India. Those who have valid visas, those who have other kind of documents like OCIs are free to travel to India. But the issue is of incitement to violence, the inaction by the Canadian authorities, and a creation of an environment that disrupts the functioning of our High Commission and consulates. That's what's making us stop temporarily this issuance of visas or providing visa services. And as I said, we will be reviewing the situation on a regular basis.
Well, that was a small slice of a press conference that was held just a little while ago. Several questions on the visa suspension by India for Canada, and also clarified during the press conference that this applies to any third country issuances of Indian visas for Canadian nationals. Before I go to Dr. Dasgupta, I want to come to you, Rajiv, and basically try and understand from you the possible implications and impact of this. This is, just to be very clear, visas which will be business and tourism visas, obviously all categories of visas that are being issued by the Indian High Commission in Canada and now clarified by the MEA, applicable for other countries as well. Mr. Mehra.
Yeah, first of all, there are two things. One, they will not be issuing any fresh visas. This is what they have said. Any kind of fresh visa, including the e-tourist visa. But he said that those who have already holding visas would be able to travel. And also those holding OCI cards will be able to travel. So immediately, those traveling in the next couple of days would not be affected because they would have already taken a visa. However, in Canada is a major source market for Indian tourism. So in the long run, it will be badly hit. And the worst part is that November, December, starting October is our peak tourist season. And there are many groups, FITs, individuals booked for tourism and for business purposes also. So they will all be affected because those who have not applied the visa will not be able to come. And here, I think whether it is the Ministry of External Affairs or the Ministry of Tourism has to step in so that the hotels and the airlines, the game parks can give them the refund, which is very important at this situation. But it will definitely affect the tourism business at the moment. We already have China still not operating, and now with Canada, which is one of the major source markets which we have, will definitely affect tourism to the country in the long run. But the nation is first.
The nation is absolutely.
The nation is the first.
The nation comes first. That's a good point to make, Rajiv. The question that I want to understand from you is, what are the numbers of Canadian visitors to India that we have seen on an average in the past few years? Any numbers that you can share with us?
No, I will not have the exact numbers available. So this information will be available only with the Ministry of Tourism or the Immigration Department. I will not have, but major chunk of business I will not say as compared to USA, UK, and then comes Canada, as far as the volume of business is concerned. So, exact numbers will not be making, but I am getting calls that people have a number of groups booked up in the month of October, November from Canada. So they will all be affected badly. The travel trade will be affected. What I was projecting that by 31st March 2024, we might reach 90% of what we did to 31st March 2020. I doubt very much we'll be able to do that now.
Okay, very clearly an impact as far as tourism is concerned, as explained by Rajiv Mehra. Dr. Dasgupta, I'm coming to you on the broader implications of a standoff of sorts that is now clearly worsening. Do you expect any impact in trade terms, although it's also very clear that as far as our trade relations are concerned, Bangladesh is more important to us in some ways than Canada is, at least in terms of overall trade, Dr. Dasgupta?
If you look at the trade figures with Canada from 2016-17 onward, you'll see that Canada has been exporting between $4.72 billion to about $2.68 billion. Last year it was $4.05 billion. So it's basically more or less stagnant, or it's hit a plateau. Around $3.5 to $4 billion, you can say, for the past 7 years. India's imports have increased during this time, and Canada's exports to India account for just 0.6% of India's total imports. As far as crude oil is concerned, which India does import from Canada to the extent of just over $1 billion, India's imports of total crude oil were about $158 billion last year. So $1 billion doesn't really make much of a difference. As far as India's exports are concerned, and I am just talking of goods, it's again between $2 billion to about $4 billion. Last year it was about $4.10 billion. So it's about 0.9% of India's total exports to the world. So again, it is not very significant, but it has the potential to grow. And that is why we have been negotiating a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Canada for the past few years. It had been put on hold because of certain problems, especially the COVID pandemic, and it had been resumed last year. But again, I think the government of India has announced that it will be put on hold for the time being till the geopolitical situation gets clearer. So as far as trade is concerned, on the long-term basis, I don't think it's going to get affected. On the short-term basis, if, for instance, these visa restrictions are there for a longer time, there would be a problem in people-to-people contact to build up trade relations and to strike deals. So that is something that we need to be aware of. But overall, if you look at the picture, I don't think it is really going to matter very much. As far as the figures for tourism are concerned, Indian tourists, according to one report, in 2021, they numbered about 89,000 odd, and they spent over $3 billion in Canada. So the number of tourists going to Canada from India are many times more than the tourists coming from Canada to India. And the other point that I wanted to mention is that of 800,000 foreign students in Canada, about 20 to 25% of them are Indian citizens. And they contribute more than $4.5 billion to the Canadian economy per year.
Right. Dr. Dasgupta, one point that we also want to understand is about Canadian companies and investments in India. Do you see a sort of dark shadow on that? because there are substantial investments. For example, the Canadian pension fund holds a 6% stake in Delivery, in 2.68% in Kotak Bank, 2.37% in Zomato, over 2% in Indus Towers. So we can go through the entire list, but it's clear that there is a substantial amount of investment that is available. If you take a look at Canadian portfolio investment, equity is well over 1,50,000 crore viewers, debt almost 21,500 crore, and this is a substantial sum of money that is invested in India. Do you see that being impacted, Dr. Dasgupta?
Well, we have to differentiate, I think, between the long-term funds like the pension funds, and to my knowledge, there are at least 3 of them operating in India which have invested in India. Yes. Now, pension funds, typically, they invest with the long-term future in mind, and they invest for a period of 15 years, 20 years, because they have to assure the stakeholders back home that they will get 3-4% return, etc. So they have made handsome profits, and I don't think this political shift, which may work its way out in a few weeks or months from now on, is going to have an impact on the long-term investment prospects or pulling out of funds by the Canadians. As far as the short-term horizon is concerned, there also the portfolio investors, they want to have a good dividend, let's say between 6 months to 1 year. And that is the horizon that they have. And I don't think they are going to again pull out in a knee-jerk reaction, because this is only between government to government. It has got nothing to do on the economic front. Because if there had been this possibility that economic sanctions could be applied, or some other precipitate action could be taken which could hit the financial flow, then it could have been foreseen. Not having seen that possibility arise at the moment, I think the short-term portfolio investors also will stay invested in India.
That's an important point, and we must also keep in mind the trade that we continue to do with China, for example, and therefore trade sometimes goes its own path. Rajiv Mehra, do you expect impact on Indian tourism and travel to Canada? Because in diplomacy, and right now we are seeing the lack of it from Canada in many ways, there is a tit-for-tat action that is taken. Do you see some problems? And the numbers that Dr. Dasgupta shared, around 89,000 number of tourists, and that is several times more than what comes in from Canada.
You see, the thing is that many Indians already have visas. So if Canada do not give new visas like India has done there, and the old visas continue, there should not be much of a problem to that. However, normally when people go to Canada from India, they are going to meet friends, relatives, and things like that, and then they do some kind of a sightseeing tour as such. So Canada is not a country where someone will go only for holidays. It's merged with their family also. But the most worrying part is the students who are there at the moment in Canada. Those who were supposed to go, I think all of them have gone by about 15th of September because all classes have started there. But it will be a worry for those parents whose children are there. I do not think anything going to happen. I've been in touch with some of my colleagues there in Canada, and they've said that everything is normal here. There's nothing where Indians might be hurt or something like that. So there are no such reports as such happening. So that is very important. But still, the parents, all of them are definitely worried about it.
That is a large student population which goes to not just Canada but all over the world in search of opportunities and therefore some amount of concern. Dr. Dasgupta, would it be fair to say that any possibility of a larger deal with Canada, a trade deal of the sort that was being envisaged just maybe 3 weeks ago, is now dead and we cannot see that happening in the foreseeable future?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. That is too pessimistic an outlook. Canada and India have too many things in common to share, and including trade and the possibility to increase it manifold. Now, as far as this present imbroglio is concerned, there are reports that Prime Minister Trudeau has been egged on by his ally, the new Democratic Party, which has contributed 25 seats in Parliament to his 158. Now, in Parliament, they need 170 seats to remain in power because it is a House of 338. And the new Democratic Party is led by Rajiv Singh, who has been attending pro-Khalistani meetings in the past, and he has also been very strident in his speeches in support of Khalistan. So the term of the present government runs out in October 2025. But before that, there could possibly be an election, a midterm election before that. So things may change dramatically. So one doesn't know. And there is always this scope for negotiations, for understanding through talks. And the whole tension may die down in a few weeks' time or a month's time. That is what one hopes, that good sense will prevail.
Dr. Dasgupta, if the situation were to worsen, and this is a hypothetical question at this stage, do you think we'll be able to replace the items that we import from Canada easily? Do you see any disruptions happening there? Because primarily pulses, timber, pulp and paper, certain mining products constitute for a bulk of what we get from there, and pharma, gems and jewelry, textiles, machinery. And viewers, when Canada didn't have vaccines for COVID, it was India that had helped them. So Dr. Dasgupta, do you see a snag if it were to come to that kind of a situation?
Well, I don't see any critical item in the import basket of India from Canada. As far as pulses are concerned, we import about $400 million worth. And what we import is yellow peas, which is a substitute for arhar dal. And it is only grown in Canada. So, but we have other substitutes for tur dal. We keep buying it from the eastern seaboard of Africa. We buy it from Turkey. We buy it from Burma and other places. So there is no dearth of that. As far as the other things are concerned, oil, as I mentioned, $1 billion worth out of 4, which is 25%. We have plenty of other countries to source it from. So I don't think if things come to a very, very sorry state and there are problems in getting things sourced from Canada, there would be major problems for India. I don't think so.
Okay. As I wind down this conversation, my final question to you before we end, Dr. Dasgupta, very quickly, do you see this having some ramifications as far as overall trade is concerned? Because we see that the pattern that has been followed in the last few years is bilateral trade engagements, because a new deal for the WTO doesn't seem to be happening. Will this have a broader impact?
I don't think so. I think Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has already mentioned in this context when this came up that they are not going to pause the FTA negotiations with India. As far as this Canada comprehensive partnership negotiations are concerned, they had started quite a few years ago, and for a few years they had been suspended. So it is something which has just been resumed last year and again been suspended. It will get resumed, as soon as things come back to an even keel. So it is a lost opportunity in the sense of, market access opportunities could have opened up for both sides if it had been struck, but we can wait.
Well, certainly we can wait, and what's happening as far as national priorities is concerned is far more important. The view from our experts here on the show, viewers, is very clear. Trade is not an issue. We can easily replace most of the items that we import because that's the nature of globalized trade. But there will be some sort of short-term impact. For now, we'll have to see how this plays out in the days ahead. Dr. Dasgupta, Rajiv Mehra, thank you very much for your time on the show today. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Easynomics. We'll be back with more. Do stay tuned in. Goodbye.